if you want to do something really difficult, let's say you want to do super aggressive downhill skiing like you see on television, obviously you will not, it's not advisable that the first thing you do is you buy some skis, you go out to the top of the steepest hill and mountain in the world and try to do it because you're going to break your legs. No, you start with a ski teacher on a slope that goes like that. And then over the years you get more steeper and steeper, faster and faster. I think the same applies to most people for entrepreneurship, that they train themselves with first some work that is sort of entrepreneurial, but not that hard, and then you take on bigger and bigger tasks. And what I want to talk about is how you can do that. The first one is to become an independent business person, but without wanting to scale the company. You can open a restaurant, you can open a clinic of some kind. One thing that I see quite often is that you take a franchise, so you find some concept that works internationally, and then you say, I'd like to open a shop for this, an affiliate office for that. So you become independent, you go through the processes of starting something, but you don't have the insecurity that comes with inventing the technology. Another thing that I see quite often and sometimes becomes some of the greatest growth startups is that somebody has a hobby and they're kind of bored in a day job. When they come home, they're really enthusiastic about something else, and it ends up maybe they're selling something on the net or producing some product. And they found out that they have fans who follow them, and they become part of a community and start fabricating stuff or writing software, whatever, that people actually want. And one day they find out that what I do here for fun is so popular that I could live from it. And certainly it's a startup, and it wasn't really their idea to make a startup. So this is hobby becomes a startup. Another one is that you work as a consultant, and you think, I clearly have people who want my advice as a consultant or my services as a consultant. But I know that they pay 3 times what I actually get in salary, so somebody else is getting the difference. Now I want to start my own consulting business, and I'll go to similar clients in the future. And if you have a company that makes solutions for people, you can certainly find out that this solution I made for this company, as it typically is actually so good that I should make it into a standard product and make it for many companies. And that's also pretty low risk because you already know that there's a demand for what you do. There's also a form of entrepreneurship which is called internal venture, and that is that you have an existing company, but within that company they actually decide to make a startup under the umbrella of the existing company, where the people who run that, they have to build it up from scratch. They have to find their own ways. They're not following the standard management routines. That means you still got your safety, you got the salary, but your work is sort of entrepreneurial. And so you train yourself. You find out if this is something you like to do, if you're good at it. You find out about how this kind of work is done. Lockheed Martin was famous for doing it as what they call skunk works, where it was a situation where they had to develop a new aircraft very, very quickly, and they realized if we have to follow our normal procedures, they will never be finished fast enough because our normal procedures have too many stops and quality assurance and safety checks and so on. So they found a new room that was very smelly, by the way. That's why it was called Skunk Works. And then the people, they were working there without all this bureaucracy, and they were much faster. Another model that, for instance, Google has used is that you allow the people to spend some of their work time on their own projects. It's not without complication, because it turns out that instead of spending 20% of their time on these, they work 120%. So they work 100% of the time on normal work and then 20% more on doing other things. But these kind of things also enable people to do entrepreneurial work, but still in a protected environment. Something that I've seen a lot and I like a lot, which is called sweat equity. So the idea of sweat equity is somebody has a startup. It's not you, somebody else. They have a startup. and they need help, and you are like a gun for hire, as they call it in the Wild West. You are somebody who can really help a startup because of your technical skills or your commercial skills or your great salesman or whatever it is. So they offer their services for hire when they see a promising startup. And instead of getting paid for it, because startups don't have much money to pay with, they get paid not in cash, but they get rewarded by getting stock options. So if you do well, you end up maybe having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% of the shares in this company. And then if the company really succeeds, maybe every percentage point you had is $1 million or whatever. So quite a lot of people, they become, the first experience with entrepreneurship is through sweat equity. Another way to have an entrepreneurial lifestyle is to have a job in either private equity or venture capital. And I have to say, it's not easy to get such jobs. I saw one study in the US that there were 300 applicants for every job in venture capital, for instance. But I have to mention it. So if you work in such funds, you invest in companies and you get super involved in how to improve those companies. They're a bit different in private equity. You typically buy more, you buy controlling interest in more mature companies. Maybe it's listed companies you take private and you change them a lot. Or it's family-owned or private companies where the founder wants to pass on to a new generation doesn't want to work with it or whatever. So you come in there and you want to be the main or the only owner for maybe 5, 6 years. And typically you want to, your hope is that you can make your money 10 times back. You're not going to make your money 10 times back unless you make some major changes, prep it for much higher growth and make it much more profitable, etc. Even better for working as an entrepreneur may be to work in venture capital, where you invest in different startups and you go in and do very hands-on work in helping those startups. If you do that, then you will eventually end up working quite like the founders of the startups themselves. So it's a very, very good way to train yourself as an entrepreneur and also have an upside when it goes well for the startups. And then, of course, there's the traditional entrepreneurship, the one you see in movies where you start up your own company, you have an idea, you talk with some people, ask them, do you think it's a good idea? And they say, yeah, it's a great idea. You make a PowerPoint presentation. You probably don't have enough money to build it up yourself. Then you go out and pitch it. And when you pitched 100 investors, finally somebody says, oh, okay, I'll give you some money. And then you get started and you build it up. So this is the most sort of the traditional concept of an entrepreneur. But as I've just said, it's one out of many. But if it is in your mind, I want to become an entrepreneur, just do something in that direction and then find your way. It might take time, and it doesn't matter if it takes time. Most of the great companies are started when people are close to 40, not 18, close to 40.